Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition just got rated in Korea, and if this is real, this might be our first look at what Sega plans to do with Sonic Frontiers next. Because let's be real, Sonic Frontiers was a huge step in the right direction, but it wasn't perfect, so if a Definitive Edition does actually happen, what does it need to fix, and what could it add? Let's discuss. So if a definitive edition is actually happening, the first thing they need to improve on is the open world, because don't get me wrong, the islands in Sonic Frontiers look absolutely gorgeous, but a lot of the time they do feel kinda empty, like you're running around these huge expansive areas, but there isn't always enough to actually do, and this can be said about the post game as well. Once you beat the game, you don't have a lot you can do, and that's something a definitive edition could easily fix. You could add more enemies, more side activities, more things happening around you, make the world feel alive, because right now it looks great, but it doesn't feel as alive as it should. And another thing I would really like to see is Kronos Island not being split up into multiple sections, because Kronos was originally going to be one huge island, and honestly, I think that would have made exploration feel way better. Instead of loading into separate areas, imagine just running across one massive connected island. That would make the world feel much more seamless and way more alive. And once the open world is improved, the next thing they need to look at is the combat, because while the combat in Sonic Frontiers is fun, it can feel a bit repetitive and very button mashy. A lot of the fights start to feel the same after a while, and that's something a definitive edition could really improve on. Add more combo options, more abilities, more variety in enemies, just give the player more to work with, because right now it's fun, but it could be so much better. Especially later in the game, it starts to feel more of the same thing. It feels like you're doing the same combo over and over again. There's a great foundation here, but it could use more depth, and that's what makes it frustrating, because you see how good it can be. The combat has all the right ideas, it just needs to be pushed forward. And this is something I really want to see, playable characters, because one of the best parts of Sonic Frontiers was seeing the characters like Tails, Knuckles and Amy, but outside of Final Horizon, you never actually got to play as them. And that feels like a huge missed opportunity. Imagine being able to play as Tails flying around the islands and getting to areas Sonic can't reach, or Knuckles climbing anything and having a more power-based style, or Amy having her own unique abilities and movement. And it would give you a reason to want to go back and explore the world in completely different ways, because right now you're mostly playing as Sonic, but a definitive edition could change that completely, and it shouldn't just be limited to certain areas either. You should be able to play as all these characters across every island. Imagine going back to Kronos or Ares as Tails and Knuckles and exploring in completely different ways. That would give the game so much more replay value. And another thing I'd love to see is being able to play as Super Sonic outside of just boss fights. Imagine being able to play as Super Sonic across all the islands, flying around freely. This could also completely change how you explore the world, and it would make going back to different islands more fun, because right now Super Sonic is limited to just the boss fights, but a definitive edition could let you fully use that power. You've already earned it, so why not let the player actually use it? Plus games like Sonic Generations let you play as Super Sonic in levels, so Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition could let you do the same. Another thing a definitive edition could improve on is the story, because while the story itself is actually really good, the presentation of the cutscenes feel quite jarring and really stiff. There are moments where the characters are just standing still, barely moving while they're talking, and it kinda takes you out of the moment a little bit, and that's something a definitive edition could easily improve on. Give those scenes more animation, more movement, more life, make the characters feel more expressive, because the writing is already there. It just needs better presentation, because when the characters don't move much, it makes the scenes feel less impactful. And finally, there's a bunch of quality of life improvements a definitive edition could make, starting with things like pop-in, because that's something that takes away from how the game looks. You've got these huge, gorgeous open areas, but objects appear out of nowhere sometimes, and fixing that would make the world feel way more immersive. And movement is another big one, because while Sonic feels good to control, he could feel a lot smoother, especially in the open world and cyberspace. And speaking of cyberspace, that's another area they could improve a lot, make the movement feel more consistent, and just make those levels better overall. Another thing I really think they should do is include the spin dash from the start. Instead of having to unlock it, just give it to the player straight away, because it makes the gameplay feel so much better, and even smaller things like adding new costumes would go a long way. Just more ways to customize Sonic would make the experience feel fresh, because all these little improvements add up and they could make a huge difference overall. And that's my little thoughts on what I want from a Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition, from improving the open world to fixing the combat, adding playable characters, expanding the story, and even all of those quality of life improvements. The game already has a great foundation, it just needs that extra push to really reach its full potential, and if Sega gets this right, this could easily be the best version of Sonic Frontiers. But now I pass it to you, let me know what you would like to see from a potential Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition. A like and subscribe would be very appreciated, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.